Everybody, welcome to another episode of the Evexia Effect, where we're talking about everything wellness now across Greece, not just on Kos, our beautiful island. I've got the most amazing guest with us today, Stephanie, who's going to be talking about her retreat journey and her retreats, Nefeli Nine. So, welcome to our podcast, Stephanie. You've got such an amazing background, interesting life story to tell us, and everything about Nefeli Nine. I'm so excited to listen to what you've got to say. So, for those that don't know anything about Nefeli Nine, can you tell us a bit about what you do and what makes your retreat so unique?
Thank you very much for having me, first of all. So my retreats, I guess the main thing to start with is that they combine hiking and yoga. So two ways for me to unwind and de-stress. And it's also a way to show people perhaps a different side of Greece. It's a way to connect with nature. It's a way to connect with yourself, with other people. They're usually a week long. I work in different locations around Greece. What sort of has come in the last couple of years is really a love for Greece and showing people truly a different side, something that they don't expect. It's about taking a week off, letting me look after you, enjoying nature, enjoying being with other people in a small group setting. And I think that's the main kind of concept.
Wonderful. Um, the retreat world is growing so much at the moment. So for you to be able to contribute to that in an amazing way is absolutely fantastic. We're going to go into your personal journey so we can get to know you a little bit more. So you've got a very fascinating background. Four different nationalities across your grandparents, which makes you a very interesting person to start with. How do you think growing up in such a multicultural family has shaped your worldview and ultimately your approach to wellness?
It's something I think, it's something I'm very grateful for, having such a mixed background and having had the ability as a child to travel to different places and to experience different cultures and try different foods. And, it opens up your mind to a million things. And having the kind of cultural awareness, I guess, and learning about different places and having this melting pot of cultures. I think that kind of from on many fronts. I think food is definitely a big front in terms of a number of the places that I've got Greek and Middle Eastern background. Both places, the table is kind of one of the most important places, and so that's really how actually my journey started, is bringing people together at the table. And I think that it's something just the ability of hearing different languages around you as a kid, all of these things that add to, it's all the little kind of the things that add value essentially. And all of these things I'm so grateful for, because I feel they really shaped me as a person, and they've shaped the program that I've created, because it's based around things that I learned growing up, really.
Wonderful. You took a path. You went from the UK to the US um, to study. I believe it was your second master's degree. Um, Congratulations. And this was focusing on sport development. What drew you to sports as a tool for social change? What is your draw towards it?
I think, as a young kid in school in England, there was a lot of sport, which I don't think there is anymore, which is rather sad. But I was never very good at team sports. But it's still, it's something that I think should still be encouraged. And you see the research in terms of what, if people go through team sports, what it teaches them, it's just incredible. But I actually found myself doing martial arts when I was about 15, and suddenly feeling like I was accepted as part of this team. And, I realized the amount of things I learned about myself, managing to push certain boundaries, managing to go beyond what I thought I could do, meeting people who I never would have met before. And so that really kind of triggered something in me in terms of how powerful sport can be. And so I went and I worked for a number of years with different charities and NGOs working with sport, using sport as a tool within society. So what does that mean? For me, there were always two different kind of paths with that. There was when it's, say I grew up in London. In London, there are lots of areas where kids are living next door to each other, and there's a lot of hostility between the areas. So they'll bring kids together and get them to play football where, on the football pitch, everyone's even, equal. And I think there's something really beautiful about that. And it's something I think I always slightly envied as a girl growing up, that I couldn't just like, pick up a football and go and play with people who perhaps I wouldn't have got on with otherwise.
I relate to that very much.
Yeah. You don't want to see me play football. It's not a good look. But I think, it's just something I found very powerful in terms of learning about yourself, and in terms of learning how to work with other people, in terms of just, having a bit of self-confidence, doing something, learning something new, or pushing yourself a little bit outside your comfort zone, or having to work with someone in order to achieve something. I think there's so many lessons that can be learned through sport, and it's a language without words.
I
Yeah.
can completely agree with what you're saying there. I myself, my degree's in sports and fitness, and I grew up playing sports, team sports, and non-team sports, martial arts as well, and other kinds of sports. And the ethos and bringing people together, and yes, there's the element of competitiveness, but there's also an element of encouragement and support. There's so much in sports, and I did go to a school in the UK which had a huge emphasis on sports. So I completely relate to everything that you're saying and understand it. But you've gone from doing the sports and you're now doing hiking and yoga retreats in Greece. So what's the catalyst for this decision to moving from this team element to then going to doing the hiking and yoga? And why Greece as well?
Um, so I think it was interesting when I started yoga, I realized that it was something that actually put into practice the things that I'd learned. So yoga, there's a lot of philosophy in yoga and a lot of things that I find very interesting in terms of how they'd actually, yeah, put into words a lot of the things that I had experienced through sport. So that was my draw. I'll always have a draw to sport for development, and at any chance I get to work or help out in that, I will take it. But it's a hard world to work in, quite frankly. And in Greece, although I think there needs to be so much more of it in Greece because I think there's a huge space for it, but that's a whole nother conversation. What brought me to Greece was slightly random, to be quite honest. I was living and working in the US, and it's very hard to stay in the US. And I'd applied for various visas, but they didn't come through. And so I found myself in Athens because we no longer had a place in the UK. My grandparents had a flat in Athens, and I thought, okay. And I just felt suddenly like I was at home. Um, it was a very strong feeling, one of those that you can't argue with, you can't kind of fight against. And so I thought, okay, I guess this is where I'm staying. So now I have to find a way to stay here.
So Greece was ultimately a fresh start for you.
Yeah.
Can you share what this personally meant for you? What were you leaving behind and what were you moving towards?
What I was leaving behind, I mean, a little bit of a re-step. I was in London, and London's a fantastic city, don't get me wrong, but I don't think it was the city for me. I think I always felt like it was sort of sitting on top of me rather than me being on top of it, if that makes sense. And so I left for the US, and I needed to I wanted to be somewhere with a different pace of life because I realized that, when you finish university, often you feel like you need to be in an office and you need to do the things that everyone is meant to do. And so I tried that, and it just didn't click with me. It never felt right. I always felt like I was living in someone else's shoes. And so I sought out a slightly different life. And I went to the US to do a second master's there in sports because I was very intrigued by the American sports world. Very different to the UK. And I was working at the same time for an umbrella organization that worked with all the NGOs using sport for development. But I couldn't stay there. And so I ended up coming to Greece, and it felt like all kind of like everything worked. Felt like it was where I was meant to be because, the US was this fascinating place. Everything was so different. Things were done really differently, but it lacked a huge element for me. It lacked a kind of human element. You can live in your car in the US. You don't need to get out. You can get your groceries, your money, your alcohol, your pharmacy while you're sitting in the car. There was, Yeah, there's plenty of amazing things about the US, and I met some incredible people and did some amazing things there, but it never felt like it was somewhere I could really put roots down. I always felt slightly like an outsider. And so when I came here, it was the first time I went away on holiday when I was living in Greece, and I was driving back home from the airport, and I felt this really kind of sense of peace. I was like I was home. And I was like, okay, that's all. I don't need to question it. I don't need to think about anything else. I know. This is where I'm meant to be. It was a very strong moment.
Greece has that a very similar feeling to me, and a lot of people that I speak to, especially people not from Greece that have moved to Greece, all say the same thing. There's something which just makes you feel grounded and makes you feel like it is at home. Maybe it's because we have chosen this place, and it might not be the same for everybody else, but um, there is something here that it is a slower pace of life. It isn't as I'm not from the city, but I am from the UK, and I do prefer the slower pace of life of Greece is what I do from the UK for sure. Um, so you started your retreats here in Greece. Um, why do you think Greece is the best place for these retreats?
Oh, so many reasons, Gilly. I think I think first of all, Greece has so much more to offer than people know. I mean, just kind of let's start there. Like I think, people know snippets of Greece. I guess we know snippets of everywhere, but the thing that Greece sells typically is something that I don't know, there's an authenticity to Greece that I think is hard to find elsewhere. And that when you're surrounded by people who have that authenticity, you can be true to yourself. And if you're going on a retreat, you want to be true to yourself and understand what's going on. You want that space, and I think Greece gives you that space. And I think that's something very hard to find. I think that's
I
my
would
kind of
I agree with you on that, and I have to say, for me, um, there is a lot of amazing countries in Europe, but there's something that Greece offers a retreat. There's something in Greece. There's retreats that happen all around Europe, and this with Greece though, it offers something special to the retreat, which I don't think anywhere else in Europe particularly offers that special, unique feeling and grounding and that experience. I'm not saying that other places in Europe are lesser of a retreat. I'm just saying that Greece, for me, offers that little bit extra.
I agree, but I think, that this is what you need to have that faith in what you're doing as well. But it's, there's something, we'll be in a village of 18 people. We were, a couple of weeks ago, I was in a village of 18 people. You're not surrounded by lots of people. You're not surrounded by noise. You have this kind of, I don't know, it's something so genuine here. And but truly, I think, people don't know that Greece has mountains. People don't know that we get snow. There's so much to see.
There is. I do think Greece is getting better with its winter marketing, especially
Yeah,
this past year, last couple of years. We are getting better at it. It's not
yeah,
just a summer destination.
yeah,
And for sure, here on Kos, we're trying to promote the edge of the seasons, like your April and your Novembers.
yeah.
It's 22 degrees here today in November.
I mean,
And I'm like, I think in
yeah.
Crete this week
I'm,
it's been 36 degrees.
I'm in Crete now.
Ah, so it's 36 degrees.
I
Is
don't know
that
about that.
correct?
My car doesn't have a temperature gauge. I have a slightly old car. I don't know about 36, but it's definitely been very warm. I mean, there may have been
Yeah.
some parts that were 36. Yeah, it does not feel like November.
So it's like the perfect
It's
winter destination for sun in Crete right at this moment in
it's
time to get
perfect.
that milder weather.
Yeah.
Perfect for hiking, perfect for yoga.
Perfect for, I mean, I've been swimming most days. It's perfect for hiking. The weather is, yeah.
Wonderful, amazing. Let's talk about setting up a business in Greece. Because to
Oh,
do everything that we do, we have to have a business.
yeah.
But um, as we're technically foreigners, so what have been the biggest challenges to
Mm.
and surprises of setting up a business
Um,
in Greece?
well, luckily I am Greek, so I think I have that. That makes my life a little bit easier. But it's just, you always hear about the bureaucracy here, and there is a lot of that. And it's I think the thing that shocked me was, I don't know how to put this. It's not a misogynistic society at all. Like there's a lot of respect for women, and there's a lot of respect for women in very high positions, but sometimes I'm spoken to like I'm a little girl, and I struggle with that. Um, even my landlord speaks to me like I'm 5 years old sometimes. So that's, I think, my biggest struggle. I mean, beyond the kind of in terms of setting up a business in Greece, I think that was my biggest kind of hurdle in addition to all the other kind of, when you set something up and you're running it by yourself, you don't know anything. I didn't know anything. I was just sailing along. And so then, your first year, you look at, you just, you look back and you realize all the massive mistakes that you made. But, I laugh about it now. But it's, I think if you take a step and you want to set something up on your own, you take a risk. It's a big risk. It is a risk. And, you have, maybe there's an element of being a woman and setting something up on your own that you're a bit more stubborn and you want to do it all by yourself. And maybe there's an element of needing to ask for a bit more help sometimes. I think there's lots of different places that we can all kind of grow and learn. And I think that's, you want to prove yourself, especially when
I think understanding that we do these things and we want to achieve something, we want to create something, but then the ability to look back and understand and learn from our mistakes and learn that actually maybe I could have asked help there. So in the future, I can ask help.
Yeah.
And building a network and connections in the business
Definitely.
world has definitely served me well. At the beginning,
Yeah.
I was like, I'm doing everything on my own. And then as I've grown, I've built up a huge network, and that network is invaluable.
And that's the most important thing. And I think when I first came here, there was quite a lot of fear. I found from people. I guess it's everywhere. People are
Yeah,
worried that someone new is coming in. So, but it's so important that to have a network of people. And,
yeah.
you know,
Let's talk about your company name, Nefeli Nine.
yeah.
Very beautiful. What's the
Thank you.
story behind it, and what does it represent to you and your retreats?
So lots of things. I think I'll start with the fact that I like alliteration. So I like that. I took a little bit of poetic license in that Nefeli, the name, I've always liked the name Nefeli. I'll start there. The name Nefeli's root is in the word nephos, which in ancient Greek means cloud. So cloud nine paradise was the concept. And so I also liked that it's something that's not too difficult to pronounce. I think the funniest pronunciation I've heard was someone who called it Nefeli, which I thought was really cute. I'm okay with that. Um, and so yeah, it's I want people to feel like they're on cloud nine with me. I want people to feel like that's what my goal is, to make people feel like that.
Perfect. It is literally perfect.
Thank
Um,
you.
so we're going to start talking about the birth of your retreats now.
Yeah.
So your first ever retreat was in Dikastika,
Yeah,
correct? Yes.
correct.
Um, and this was your signature hiking and yoga retreat, and you're still doing this retreat,
Yeah,
correct? Yeah.
correct.
What made you choose this location for your very first retreat?
So my very first retreat that I wanted to do, I decided I was going to do it in Patmos because we used to have a house in Patmos. So not too far from you, actually.
Yes. Yep.
And Patmos is a tiny island. It's beautiful. It's wonderful. It's got great hikes. It's fantastic. And I didn't think about anything other than that. And I was like, this is where I'm going to do my first retreat. And then you start thinking about the logistics. So for those of you who are not familiar with Patmos, there is no airport. You can either fly to Kos or to Leros and then get on another boat, or you can take a 9-hour ferry from Athens, which is not, your first retreats, when you're handling everything, you need logistics to be easy. And, that ups the price of everything a lot. It ups the difficulty. It makes everything more complicated. So I was like, okay, let me go back to the drawing board. And I started looking, like, again, in my mind, I was like, a retreat needs to be really far away. It needs to be somewhere in the middle of nowhere. And so one day I went to see some friends, and they took me to this fish taverna on the beach just outside of Athens. And it was so wonderful. It's a family-run place where they make their own bread, they make their own pies, the father and son catch the fish. It's so authentic and so, first of all, the food is phenomenal. And I'm like, wait, why am I looking so far when we have things like this just outside of Athens? So then that's how I kind of started exploring that area, and I found the Kastika. And I was like, okay, maybe this is where I need to be, because the Kastika is an area just an hour from Athens, and it's on the sea. You're overlooking Evia Island. There's a number of hiking trails around there. And so slowly, slowly, I put together the program there. And I thought, I can have everyone arriving at different times and pick them up without a problem. If I have people arriving at, everyone arriving at different times, and they need to get on ferries and planes, and it's just too much work for me in the beginning. So that's how I settled on the Cascan. It's a place I love.
Wonderful. How did your first retreat go?
Oh my
I know
God.
that my first retreat, some things went amazing, some things not so much. There was a lot of lessons in it, for sure.
I mean, to be quite honest, Jimmy, I don't remember most of it because I think I was so panic stricken. Like, I have every season I have a notebook and I write everything down. It's a way I find it very helpful in terms of decompressing. When I get into bed, I write down what I've done in the day. But for that retreat, I have this notebook and you can sense the panic in me. I was waking up at about 4:30, 5 a.m. I'd never cooked for that many people before. I'd never cooked for that many people before, and I'm selling the food, so I'm like, this has to be perfect. My blender broke on day one, and I'm in the kitchen, and my blender is it's literally fuming. There's like flames coming out of it, and I'm still trying to press the button. So, it was, but so, it's somehow I pulled it off. I did, and actually, it's funny because from that retreat, it was 6 people, and 4 of them have come back,
That's amazing. That is a
which is
sign of true success. The moment you get repeat guests, that
yeah.
means that you've succeeded.
But it's just, when I look back and think of the panic that I was so wired the whole time. I must have looked like I was high. I felt like I couldn't sit down because if I sat down, I might get sleepy. So I was just kind of, but it's, I think I still have a healthy amount of fear when I've got a retreat running in terms of, I need to be on everything. I need to make sure everything's running properly. I need to make sure the food there, that everything's okay. And I think once you lose that, then I'd be worried. But that
Yeah.
level of fear is not necessary for anything ever.
It was clearly an inner struggle, and you weren't passing that on to anybody else. Nobody noticed that you were feeling that way, which is a good skill to have, really, to have it on the inside and not portrayed on the outside.
I mean, Gilly,
But
I have to be
the
honest with you. I
more and
had
more we do, the easier it does get, for sure.
definitely, definitely. But to be honest, also, I have to, I have the most wonderful family on the planet. I love them. And they helped me a lot that week. So, I panicked that I didn't have food and they would help me, but they would go to do a
Oh,
supermarket shop for me. So, like I had, I had a support team behind me, which I think is also something that, let's be real, you can't do anything without that. So, I mean, you can, but it's not necessary. If there's people there, like, ask for help. Yeah.
wonderful. So you've now put that first retreat behind you. You now have 5 different locations.
Yeah.
Five. Firstly, what are your 5 locations, and why did you choose these locations? And are you scouting out new locations?
Always, always, always scouting out new locations because the more I discover of this country, the more I want to show it to people. Um, that's the kind of number one thing. Also, I do get people coming back quite a lot, so it's nice to have something to show them, something different. So for now, the current locations I work are in Vikastika, where I started, and then in Pilio, where I also do hiking and yoga, in Agrafa, in Lake Plastira, in Crete, which is my newest location, and in Zagorochoria, which are the mountains in the north of Greece. Um, I don't cook on all of them. There are 2 that I don't cook on. So that
Okay.
makes, because, it's also for the moment, it's just me. So I need to find a way to keep, to have more retreats on the go, but without extending myself too much. So,
Yeah, it's
um,
important.
yeah,
Um, each locations offers something very different.
correct.
Can you paint a picture of us of if someone chooses between your Pelion retreats versus your newest edition, your Crete retreat, what's the experience you would get to expect from each retreat?
So it depends. I mean, I find, there's a couple of factors. I guess there are some that have slightly harder trails. There are some that are more designed for people who want to be by the sea. Because there's that as well. There's a lot of people who just want, who want to be in the mountains, but also who want to be by the beach. So there are some that have kind of more water experience. So in Pelio, for example, we go kayaking. Whereas Crete is also, we have a lot of sea. There's also a slight difference in price. Like, because the other thing is that I rent houses. So if I find a house that has the number of bedrooms and bathrooms that I like, I'm like, oh, let's check out the hiking trails around here because it's not easy to find houses. I'll be looking on Airbnb and I'll put in whatever 14 people, and it'll pull up something with 5 bedrooms and 1 bathroom,
Yeah.
which
Finding the ideal venue is very difficult.
it's very difficult.
We have it here on Cost, like, because I help people plan retreats here on Cost, and they come to me with specified ideas. I'm like, right, we'll see if we can find that
Yeah,
specific venue, but it's
yeah,
not easy. The bigger venues are not easy to come by,
no,
especially if you're wanting like a private venue.
yeah. That's a struggle for me, and that's a lot of the like that's partly what dictates my locations as well. If I find the right spot,
Yeah,
because there are areas in Greece that I'd love to work in, but I haven't yet found a property that I can work in.
yeah.
Um,
Okay.
but I also, I think it's, in the beginning I was like, am I doing something wrong? Should I just stick to one thing? And now I'm like, no, there's so much I want to show people, and they get very different experiences wherever they come with me. It's nice to show people different things.
You've got one retreat, which is your trekking adventure,
Correct.
rather than a hiking and yoga adventure or retreat.
Yeah.
Which is this retreat and what's the difference? Um, is it designed for somebody different?
So I use the word trekking to denote that the hikes are harder. Um, because this is in the north of Greece where we do some big hikes up there, and it's less of a yoga retreat and more of a hiking holiday. But it is just the most magical area. I adore it. And I wanted to make that to use, you know, language is very important, and how we sell things is very important, and the terminology we use is very important. So it's funny, since I called it a trekking adventure, I now get people asking me if they have to carry their backpacks on the trip, which I guess makes sense, but you don't, by the way. We take care of that for you. I mean, the essence stays the same on everything. One of my main goals with these retreats is to take care of every element for you. Because I've realized that, you know, one of the biggest stresses that we have is decision making. So whether that's work, whether that's at home, whether that's personal, whether that's what am I going to eat for dinner, whatever, it's tiring. When you're tired, you don't want to have to make decisions. So my concept with any retreat you come on is to take all of that out of your hands and just, there's 2 very simple questions you'll have with me. Tea or coffee? Red or white wine? Nothing else. Um,
They're perfect questions.
and so
But
that
I
applies across the board.
But I think the
Um,
whole element of retreats, because retreats can be so different for different
yeah,
people, but it is that element of submitting to control, submitting to having to be somewhere, submitting to have to
absolutely.
think. So we actually have time to be within ourselves and come out of ourselves. So not having to worry about the little things in our
Absolutely.
everyday lives. And especially for people that maybe have businesses or have high demanding jobs, have kids, life is our brains are on overdrive 24/7.
Absolutely. I think, yeah, I think, and it's funny how people don't slow down and they don't take the time. And, sometimes it brings up a lot of stuff. It can.
Yeah.
But so yeah, Zagorochoria is the hiking that I wanted to keep that as something, not keep it as like name it as something slightly separate because the hikes are more demanding. It's not for someone who hasn't done hiking before.
Okay.
Because, we've got a 15-kilometer hike through a gorge, which is
Oh,
once you go
sounds
in,
amazing to me.
oh, it's absolutely unbelievable. But it's on a lot of the other routes that I do, we can adapt them, we can change them, but those ones can't be adapted. And I don't want people to, I want people to know what they're getting into.
Yeah. Yeah, perfect. Sounds amazing. So your standard retreats, you're hiking and yoga, you're
Yeah.
combining both activities, but they're both in a lot of ways very different practices. Um, what's the magic that brings these two together? How does it work?
think So I think they're both very mindful exercises. They're both very, hiking can be an amazing way of decompressing, of switching off, of, you know, being present, of being in nature. And I think those are things that yoga teaches you as well in a different way. In addition, I mean, and so I think there's a kind of psychological, mental side, but there's also the physical side because, when you've been hiking all day, yoga is a great practice to kind of unwind and to open up your shoulders and your chest and release your low back. And so I think the two together for me, ultimately, Chile, I sell what I do. I found that I really really liked the combination. I found the yoga really helps with the hiking, and they're both different ways of decompressing. So it's sometimes for me a hike is very much like a meditation. It's kind of, I probably get more into a flow state on a hike sometimes than I do in a seated meditation. So I think that for me is a nice kind of, and there also, I think there are a lot of people whose minds are so busy that perhaps a seated meditation can be really hard. So that's why hiking can kind of provide that place sometimes. And
I think the being out in nature, moving in nature.
yeah,
I was going to talk about why you believe movement and physical challenge is great for transformation, but you've kind of alluded on that already. Um, but just being in nature and moving in nature, we don't necessarily have to be sitting still. Sometimes sitting still is not always the best thing for our brain, for our mind, our wellness. Um, do you want to elaborate further on it?
I mean, I think going just the concept of moving in nature, it's also like the tactile element of it. That often where we'll be somewhere where we pick fruits, in Pelion October, it's literally Pelion and the amount of fruits we pick there is kind of unbelievable. This year I've picked wild strawberries, cherries, apricots, apples, walnuts, kumara, strawberry tree, wild greens, mustard seeds, you name it. We've picked it, capers. And it's just that kind of, it's moving in nature, but it's also interacting with nature that kind of, I think, takes us away. It brings you into a different space. And there's something so simple about it, but so pure and so beautiful. I think that's one thing I forgot to mention that I'm not going to go too deep into, but movement for me is play. So play is a state where we're not thinking about an outcome. Play is a state where you don't if you give a kid a toy, they don't ask you how it works. They just play with it. Maybe they don't play with it right, but they just play with it. And this is something that we lose touch with big time. And this is something that we need to, for me, I think, need to get in touch with more. And that is what I find nature does. Nature allows that, whether it's just playing on a beach or whether it's kind of maybe there's a little bit of a rocky section on a hike and you need to get a bit more tactile, whatever it is, it's this disconnecting from the thing of having to know everything and where everything goes and how we do everything and getting back in touch with a more playful side. That for me is kind of,
That's such an interesting outlook, and I would actually like to talk more about that, but we won't because it will take over. But
yeah.
definitely, maybe in the future, we will talk more about that concept because play is something that is very good for us, very good for our soul, very good for our wellness. And as adults, we're told we're not allowed to play anymore. We're told we have to follow rules, we have to do this. And it, yeah, it takes away, well, it basically makes us more stressed if we don't
Definitely.
play. Yeah,
Definitely.
but we won't get into it in more detail because we'll be here for a long time.
No.
But
Yes.
we'll get into Greece and its ancient wisdom. So
Yeah.
Greece has this ancient history, this ancient philosophy, lots of interesting characters that come into play with Greece and the wisdom. From Asclepion healing temples, Hippocrates, the concept of soma, the body, holistic health. How do you weave, or do you weave any of that Greek philosophy into your retreats?
Um, I try to, but it's not something I kind of, so depending where we are, something I really like is to take people to an archaeological site if I can. And to, because it's really, there's so, but I try and take them to lesser known archaeological sites. So actually in
Yeah,
Crete here, the guide I work with studied archaeology, which is fascinating because she has so much information and knowledge to share with us. And, we actually go on a hike to a place where she was excavating, so she knows the area very well. And I think, it's very important for me that everyone I work with has something to add because these are, it's those little bits of information that for me change something, that for me make it much more of an experience. It's not just a hike, it's a hike where we learn something, or, maybe it's not something you're super interested in, but it's a nice, it's just something different. And I think I think for me, really, it's the purity of Greece, the pureness that you feel, and the fact that I had a lady with me recently, and she says to me, she's like, "Steph, this isn't a problem, but I'm just wondering, where are all the people?" Because I work in the shoulder seasons, and I work in areas that are not as popular, and it's just that kind of sense of freedom and that connection, I think, that is the powerful part. So I don't
yeah,
know that I necessarily delve into ancient Greek. Although I do I also like to give people books. And so sometimes I try and find books about like Greek philosophy to give people, or it's, I always like to give people a book in their gift bags. Mm.
perfect. So you've talked about the transformation that your guests can go through. So what do they typically can't get my words out now. Typically experience? Is it a physical, mental, or emotional, or is it all of them? Or does it depend on the individual person?
I would say definitely depends on the individual person, and also it's something that I am very reluctant to ever say that I offer. We can't offer healing, we can't offer anything. What we can offer is a safe space. So what I offer is a safe space. I offer people space. I take care of all of the boring little necessities of what they need to do, what they need to eat. I take all of that out of their hands and I give them space. And I work with a team of people who I know are supportive. I know if anyone needs anything, are there. And so, you know, it's it can be a physical transformation. I have people who haven't done that much and who come and who share things with me afterwards that they've started doing more hiking. Or there's a lot of people I find because, in the beginning I was terrified of the cooking because you look at other retreats that have professional chefs and you're like, oh my God, my food doesn't look anything like that. But the fact that I cook, I think is actually, well, first of all, I love it, but it's also nice because I'm showing people you don't need to be, you know, a five-star chef to have to be able to eat well and eat healthy and eat clean. And so I'll often get people sending me photos of the food that they've made. It's not about making huge changes. It's little things. It's everything in life is little details. It's one little detail, that one thing that someone says to you that shifts something. And it's not, that's why I'm always very reluctant to answer a question like that with anything kind of concrete, because it's, you know what it's like, someone random can say something to you that just triggers something and you're like, oh wow, yeah. So I
Yeah,
think it's just about giving people space, really.
perfect. Do you have a typical type of person that comes to Nefeli Nine, or
Um,
is it very diverse?
I would say the kind of thing that connects people is perhaps stress. So I had one retreat last year where 4 out of the 8 people had taken time off work for burnout. Which is it's so, I don't know, it's really kind of quite shocking when you think about how many people are experiencing that and how perhaps there isn't support systems in place for that. But I would say, I mean, age-wise, I don't get too many people in their 20s. I get the odd person in their 20s. My first client was in her 70s. She sent me an email. She's like, "Dear Steph, I'm 70. Can I come?" And I was like, "Of course you can." Um, but it's, typically people who just need some time off, who are so often people who have stressful jobs, who have families, who just need a bit of a decompression, really. I think that's my target client, really. Um,
Okay, wonderful. Can you talk us through a typical day on one of your retreats?
Absolutely. So typically we get up at 4 a.m. No, of course we don't. Typically, depending depending on the season in terms of light and things, we get up, I guess, around 7:30, and we have our first yoga class kind of somewhere between 7 and 8 is yoga. And so that goes on for an hour, and then we have breakfast all together. And then after breakfast, we head out for a hike. And again, depending on the hike we do or our location, we either have lunch out. I love picnics. I really love picnics. So I try and do picnics. It's really important that people try tavernas. So you can't come to Greece and not experience really local food. So we'll perhaps have lunch out, and then head back to the house in the afternoon. I work with masseuses in all locations, so you can get a massage in the afternoon, and then we'll have evening yoga at around, again, depending on sunset time, probably around 6-ish, and then dinner all together.
Sounds wonderful.
Yeah,
Um, Greek nature is absolutely stunning. I'm in love with it. You're in love with it. No doubt about it. The mountains, the trails. I love hiking in Greece. The views that you get. What's the most breathtaking moment or location that you've ever
oh,
experienced?
Gilly, I can't answer that question. There's too many. There's too many. I would say one of my favorite hikes in Greece. Oh, how can I even answer that? Crete has some really extraordinary places. Agrafa has one of the most, like, for me, one of the most mind-blowing hikes. But then Zagrochoria does too. I mean, it's, it's, there's so much to offer. I was sorry, I'm like frozen here because you can't. It's like asking me my favorite food. I can start with one thing and then it'll turn into 100. Um, but I think it's the diversity of Greece and what we have to offer, and the fact that I often get asked to see your mountains. I'm like, I don't have to choose. I live in Greece. Like, you know, you're. I was on a beach. You can be on a beach looking at a mountain that's over 2,000 meters tall. We truly have, I mean, something magical. I think what I will say is the shoulder seasons. So in spring in Crete, okay, and it's just extraordinary. You have 2 big mountain ranges in Crete over about 2,500 meters each, which means there's snow up there until easily June. But you've got spring flowers all over the place. And then you've got the sea. So you're driving down the road, there's fields of wildflowers, there's snow, and then you're looking at the sea and it's sunny. So you're just
Incredible.
kind of, your senses are just turned
It's a
into
bit
kind
of
of
Neverland,
overdrive.
isn't it? 4 seasons in one place.
Yeah. But then, I was in Zagrochoria a couple of weeks ago where it's like you are in autumn, like you're physically in autumn. Everything, that they have this, I don't know what it's called, this kind of creepers all over the place that start green and then slowly, slowly, gradually go bright red. I mean, it looks like bougainvillea at the end of it. It's so colorful. And, all the trees were the colors, all the leaves had changed color, but they hadn't fallen yet. So you're just in this kind of, it's just magical. I don't know.
Yes.
Yeah. It means
Hiking
I'm
can
happy
be
to do the
quite
same hike 100 times.
well, hiking can be quite intimidating for some people that are not really experienced in that kind of thing.
Right.
What would you say to somebody that feels interested in your retreats, but they're worried they may not be fit enough or have enough experience?
So that is why I find my signature Tikastika, the hikes are a little easier, and it's nice to have an option for people who want a sort of intro. Um, I find that there's a lot of fear around hiking if you haven't done it. Actually, that's why when I'm in Athens, which is not all that often over winter, I have a women's hiking group because there's a lot of fear around it. People think that they're going to get lost or that they don't know how, and it's a shame because, hiking is something that you can actually do for quite a long time. It's not, as long as you're mobile, it's something quite accessible for a lot of people. I'm not talking about kind of crazy big mountains or super hard hikes, but, it's a really lovely way to see a place. It's a lovely way to keep fit. It's a lovely way to, to build a community. So yeah, I think, first of all, I'm always happy to speak. Typically, if people have any concerns, they contact me directly. And also, none of my program is you don't have to do any of it if you don't want to. I had one woman come who didn't want to hike at all. She just needed a bit of a health reboot, and so she wanted to eat well and do some yoga and swim in the pool, and that's what she did. She hadn't told me that before though, so she shows up and she's like, "Oh, I'm not going hiking," and I was like, "Oh, what am I going to do with you?" But she was so happy. She came and got what she wanted. So, it's I was completely panic stricken at the beginning. I was like, what she's going to hate it. But then also, everyone's adults. I'm not going to tell you what to do. If you don't want to do it, don't do it. If you want to come and just eat well and be with people for a week and do some yoga, you're welcome to do that.
You're leading these retreats
Okay, you're
yourself.
back.
You're holding the space for your guests. That's a lot of energy to give. How do you maintain your own wellness whilst pouring so much into others?
That I think was the biggest struggle in the beginning. So when I started, I didn't consider myself at all. And after my first full season, I kind of collapsed for a couple of months. It was weird. I had zero creativity. So, I pretty much ate boiled eggs for about 2 weeks because I couldn't even fathom making anything else. And so now it's just, it's small changes. It's just about silly things like, go and have your nails done once in a while, where, you can't look at your phone, you can't do anything. It's just you for half an hour. Or, go and do a workout. Or if I have time in between things, I'll go and do a big hike somewhere. And just, it's funny because my family always like, what, you're going to go and do like a massive hike in between retreats? I'm like, yeah, because if I get into the mountains, for me, that's my way of switching off. But it's just being conscious of it. I work with a functional doctor as well, and he's helped me in terms of supplementation. He's also helped me in terms of my menu, which is great. But it's just about making little shifts and being aware of it. I think because when you're not aware of it, it kind of slaps you around the face like and I was in a bit of shock at first, and then you just if it's just really for me, it's really really little things that just when you know that you're doing something for yourself. So when I'm running a retreat, I always wake up kind of half an hour earlier than I need to, so that I have half an hour for myself. I do a bit of my yoga. I have that space for me, which I find very important. So it's just carving out those little moments for yourself, I think, that are key.
I think it is really, really important. I was the same when I first started running retreats, really didn't consider myself. Everything was all about the retreat. But that having that time to put your own wellness as a priority, which means you can give more energy, more to your guests, really important. Um, it's not always glamorous running retreats. Logistics, weather, unexpected challenges. We've spoken about some of them throughout our chat today. What's been your biggest challenge building Nefeli Nine, and how did you overcome it?
Biggest challenge building it, marketing. Marketing still is the biggest challenge for me. I had no idea how to, you can create the perfect product, but if no one knows about it, you're not getting anywhere. And so that for me has been the biggest learning curve, the biggest struggle. It still remains a struggle, it's kind of, and it's also, when you're one-man show. It's like you want to pour your energy into creating the perfect retreat, but you need to pour your energy into doing the marketing side as well. And that's, in the beginning, you don't feel confident enough to sell yourself, to sell what you're doing, because you don't know enough about it. You don't know enough about yourself in that space to sell it. So I think that for me was that was and is the hardest part, is the marketing.
Marketing, I
And
think, is the biggest challenge in the retreat world. And this is how I ended up setting up retreats in Greece and setting up this podcast. It was all
yeah,
about initially for my own retreats to get the word out about my own retreats. And
yeah,
then it's grown, and hopefully we're helping other people like yourself, because there are so many amazing retreats happening in Greece. Yours is one of them. You're high up there on the incredible offers out there. So this is where Retreats in Greece came about, and hopefully, by looking at advertising marketing many retreats means we're spreading the word and more people are gravitating towards us, understanding that Greece is the place to come and do a retreat. Um, if someone's listening to this and feeling burnt out, disconnected, or stuck in their routine, why should they consider a hiking and yoga retreat? What would you say to them?
it's a I mean, look, obviously it's a hard place to be. That's a very difficult space to be in. And it's very hard when you feel like that. There's a lot of fear around doing anything different. And, I think we've all felt that where you feel kind of locked in this space and you need something to shift it. So I think if you have the ability to get out of your little box, because I find, when we're really worried, we look at things here. And so you don't have any ability to actually see what's going on. So first of all, taking a step outside of your little box is a great place to start. Um, for me, hiking it's really how I've dealt with a lot of things, just working up a sweat, being outside, letting go of things, realizing that the important things are simple, stepping away from, I think it's important. I think, yeah, it's really important to step away from things to be able to see them clearly. So also, if I can look after you for a week and take care of all the boring things, give you the space to think about something, I'm more than happy to do that. That's
Sounds perfect and wonderful. Um, we're going to wrap up a little bit here. So, obviously, we're on the Evexia effect. Evexia means wellness in Greek. That's why we chose the word. What does this mean to you, holistic well-being? What does it mean to you personally, and how do you cultivate it in your own life?
holistic well-being. I think contentment, really. I think we all seek for something kind of really extreme, but I think the reality is we want to be content. We want to feel safe. We want to feel, you know, last week I took a few days off and I went to an island south of Crete and I was just sitting on a beach and I just had the sun on my back. And that I sat there, I didn't move, I couldn't move. I was so content. And I think that's what it means to me. Just content, like being happy with the simple things, understanding where you are. Well-being it's about stripping back all the kind of layers of complexity and understanding what you want and who you are. And I think that's what makes us happy in the long term. It's not, it's not the shiny things. The handbag may make you happy for half an hour, but it's about the deep rooted things that are typically the simple things. So I think that's where well-being starts for me. Um, having feeling safe, having good people around you, feeling nourished by your food, feeling that it's okay to eat a chocolate cake every now and then or a pizza, not being stressed by that. I think, well, it's about balance, really, isn't it? I think balance is the key. It's about having everything in balance and not, balance doesn't mean we're here all the time. Balance means that we go up, we go down, we go up, we go down, and then we sometimes find ourselves there and then we go up and down again. I think that's realistically speaking what well-being is for me.
I think balance is a key word that we hear time and time again when we talk
I
about
can't tell if
wellness.
I've lost you.
So it's been absolutely wonderful chatting to you today, Stephanie. Thank you so much for being a guest on our show. If somebody wants to know more about your retreats, where can they find out? So your website, your social media.
I've got my website, I've got Instagram and Facebook. I also have a newsletter that you can find by opening my website. I send a newsletter once a month with what's happening, with upcoming retreats, with little fun things that I find, with recipes, and yeah, that's a great way to learn
Perfect.
more about us, really,
I
is through
will
the
put all that
newsletter.
information in the description on the podcast so people can go directly to it. But thank you so much.
Fantastic. Thank you so
Thank you for
much, Gilly.
listening, everybody. It's been great to have you here. Hopefully, you've taken a little bit of interest in Stephanie's Nefeli Nine Retreats because they do sound incredible. If you want more information, do visit her website, or you can also message me and we'll point you in the right direction. Thank you very much, and we'll speak to you again soon.
Looking forward to it, Gilly.